How is the autonomic nervous system organized?
The autonomic nervous system regulates involuntary activity, which is not controlled on a conscious level. It consists of two divisions, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic division is often called the fight or flight system because it usually stimulates tissue metabolism, increases alertness, and generally prepares the body to deal with emergencies. The parasympathetic division is considered the rest and repose division, because it conserves energy and promotes sedentary activities, such as digestion.
When did the first commercial nuclear power plant in the United States become operational?
The first commercial electricity generating nuclear power plant in the United States was located in Shippingport, Pennsylvania. It became operational on December 2, 1957, supplying energy to the Pittsburgh area. It continued to supply power until 1982. Although the Shippingport power plant was the first large-scale nuclear power plant in the United States, it was not the first civilian power plant. A few months earlier, in July 1957, the Santa Susana sodium reactor experimental in California began providing power.
What is widely considered to be one of the earliest celestial observatories?
Built in England between 2500 and 1700 CE, Stonehenge is one of the earliest observatories or observatory temples. It is widely believed that its primary function was to observe the midsummer and midwinter solstices.
How loud is thunder?
A clap of thunder can be as loud as 120 decibels, which is comparable to the noise at a rock concert, a chainsaw, or a pneumatic drill.
What does it mean to have 20/20th vision?
Many people think that 20/20th vision equals perfect eyesight, but it actually means that the eye can see clearly at 20 feet. 6 meters, what a normal eye can see clearly at that distance. Some people can see even better 20/15, for example. With their eyes, they can view objects from 20 feet, 6 meters. away with the same sharpness that a normal-sighted person would have to move into 15 feet, 4.5 meters, to achieve.
Are all snowflakes shaped alike?
Some snowflakes may have strikingly similar shapes, but these twins are probably not molecularly identical. In 1986, cloud physicist Nancy Knight believed she found a uniquely cloned pair of crystals on an oil-coated slide that had been hanging from an airplane. This pair may have been the result of breaking off from a star crystal, or were attached side by side, thereby experiencing the same weather conditions simultaneously. Unfortunately, the smaller aspects of each of the snow crystals could not be studied because the photograph was unable to capture possible molecular differences. So, even if the human eye may see twin flakes, on a minuscule level these flakes are different.
When were chromosomes first observed?
Chromosomes were observed as early as 1872, when Edmund Russo 1841 to 1897, described seeing items that resembled small rods during cell division. He named the rod stabchen. Edouard van Beneden, 1846 to 1910, used the term bâtonnet in 1875 to describe nuclear duplication. The following year, 1876, Edouard Balbiani, 1825 to 1899, described that at the time of cell division the nucleus dissolved into a collection of bâtonnets itroids, narrow little rods. Walther Fleming, 1843–1905. Discovered that the chromosomal threads or phaeton split longitudinally during mitosis.
What materials are used to make the most powerful permanent magnets?
The most powerful permanent magnets are made from alloys of iron, boron, and neodymium. Magnetic strength is measured in units called Tesla and Gauss. 1 Tesla equals 10,000 Gauss. Most of the magnets used to decorate the refrigerator are 10 Gauss. The most powerful permanent magnets produce magnetic fields of approximately 1.5 Tesla.
What plants can be used to determine blood type?
Lectins, proteins that bind to carbohydrates on cell surfaces found in lotus plants, as well as jack and lima beans, can be used to determine a person's blood type. Lectins bind to glycoproteins present on the plasma membrane of red blood cells. Because the cells of different blood types have distinct glycoproteins, cells of each blood type bind to a specific lectin.
What is a monkey ball tree?
The Osage orange tree, Maclura pomifera, produces large, green, orange-like fruits. The fruit is roughly spherical, 3.5 to 5 inches. 8.8 to 12.7 centimeters, in diameter, and have a coarse, pebbly surface.
How much does a cloud weigh?
although they look light and fluffy floating in the sky. Clouds actually consist of water droplets and are heavy. A 1 cubic kilometer meaning 1 kilometer x 1 kilometer x 1 kilometer or 0.6 miles x 0.6 miles x 0.6 miles. Cumulus cloud has an estimated weight of 2.211 billion pounds, 1.003 billion kilograms. Clouds float because they are suspended on dry air. An equal volume, 1 cubic kilometer, of dry air weighs 2.220 billion pounds, 1.007 billion kilograms. Dry air has a density of 1.007 kilograms/cubic meter while the density of the moist cloud is 1.003 kilograms/cubic meter. Clouds float because they are less dense than the drier air.
What is gutta percha?
Gutta percha is a rubber-like gum obtained from the milky sap of trees of the Sapataceae family. Found in Indonesia and Malaysia. Once of great economic value, gutta percha is now being replaced by plastics in many items. Although it is still used in some electrical insulation and dental work. The English natural historian John Tradescant, c. 1570 to 1638, introduced gutta percha to Europe in the 1620s. And its inherent qualities gave it a slow but growing place in world trade. By the end of World War II, however, many manufacturers switched from gutta percha to plastics, which are more versatile and cheaper to produce.
Who invented bifocal lenses?
The original bifocal lens was invented in 1784 by Benjamin Franklin, 1706-1790. At that time, the two lenses were joined in a metallic frame. In 1899, J. L. Borch welded the two lenses together. One-part bifocal lenses were developed in 1910 by researchers at the Carl Zeiss Company.
When was the first patent issued in the United States?
The first U.S. patent was granted on July 31, 1790 to Samuel Hopkins, 1743 to 1818. Of Philadelphia for making potash and pearl ash, a cleaning formula called potash. It was a key ingredient for making glass, dyeing fabrics, baking, making saltpeter for gunpowder, and most importantly for making soap.
Do pine trees keep their needles forever?
Pine needles occur in groups, called fascicles, of 2 to 5 needles. A few species have only one needle per fascicle, while others have as many as 8. Regardless of the number of needles, a fascicle forms a cylinder of short shoots that are surrounded at their base by small, scale-like leaves that usually fall off after 1 year of growth. The needle-bearing fascicles are also shed a few at a time, usually every 2 to 10 years, so that any pine tree, while appearing evergreen, has a complete change of needles every 2 to 4 years of less.
What is hydroponics?
This term refers to growing plants in some medium other than soil. The inorganic plant nutrients, such as potassium, sulfur, magnesium, and nitrogen, are continuously supplied to the plants in solution. Hydroponics is mostly used in areas where there is little soil or unsuitable soil, since it allows precise control of nutrient levels and oxygenation of the roots. It is often used to grow plants used for research purposes. Julius von Sachs, 1832 to 1897, a researcher in plant nutrition, pioneered modern hydroponics. Research plants have been grown in solution culture since the mid-1800s. William Garrick, 1882 to 1970, a scientist at the University of California, defined the word hydroponics in 1937. In the 50 years that hydroponics has been used on a commercial basis, it has been adapted to many situations. NASA will be using hydroponics in the space station for crop production and to recycle carbon dioxide into oxygen. Although successful for research, hydroponics has many limitations and may prove frustrating for the amateur gardener.
How are Celsius temperatures converted into Fahrenheit temperatures?
The formulas for converting Celsius temperatures into Fahrenheit and the reverse are as follows: F equals C x 9/5 plus 32 C equals F 32 x 5/9.
When were microfibers invented?
Microfibers are very fine fibers with a diameter of less than 1 denier. Denier is the term used to describe the diameter or fineness of a fiber. It is the weight in grams of a 9,000 meter, 9,842 yards, length of fiber. Many microfibers are 0.5 to 0.6 denier. As a comparison, microfibers are 100 times finer than human hair and half the diameter of a fine silk fiber. The first microfiber fabric was ultrasuede, TM, created by Masashi Okamoto in 1970 at Toray Industries in Japan. His colleague, Toyohiko Hakoda, perfected the process to create a soft, supple, stain-resistant fabric.
What are naval stores?
Navel stores are products of coniferous trees as pine and spruce. These products include pitch, tar, resin, turpentine, pine oil, and terpenes. The term navel stores originated in the 17th century when these materials were used for building and maintaining wooden sailing ships.
What antidote is available for mushroom poisoning?
No effective antidote for human poisoning by mushrooms has been discovered. The toxins produced by mushrooms accumulate in the liver and lead to irreversible liver damage. Unfortunately, there may be no indication of poisoning for several hours after ingesting a toxic mushroom. When the symptoms do present, they often resemble typical food poisoning. Liver failure becomes apparent 3 to 6 days after ingesting the poisonous mushroom. Oftentimes a liver transplant may be the only possible treatment.
How is Pascal's triangle used?
Pascal's triangle is an array of numbers, arranged so that every number is equal to the sum of the two numbers above it on either side. It can be represented in several slightly different triangles, but this is the most common form. 1 1 2 3 6 515. The triangle is used to determine the numerical coefficients resulting from the computation of higher powers of a binomial, two numbers added together. When a 2 binomial is raised to a higher power, the result is expanded, using the numbers in that row of the triangle. For example, a plus b, 1 equals a 1 plus b1, using the coefficients in the second line of the triangle. A plus b, 2 equals a 2 plus 2 of plus b2, using the coefficients in the next line of the triangle. The first line of the triangle correlates to a and b0. While the calculation of coefficients is fairly straightforward, the triangle is useful in calculating them for the higher powers without needing to multiply them out. Binomial coefficients are useful in calculating probabilities. Blaise Pascal was one of the pioneers in developing laws of probability. As with many other mathematical developments, there is some evidence of a previous appearance of the triangle in China. Around 1100 CE, the Chinese mathematician Chia Xian wrote about the tabulation system for unlocking binomial coefficients, the first publication of the triangle was probably in a book called Piling Up Powers and Unlocking Coefficients by Lu Juxi.
What is ambergris?
Ambergris, a highly odorous, waxy substance found floating in tropical seas, is a secretion from the sperm whale, Physeter catodon. The whale secretes ambergris to protect its stomach from the sharp bone of the cuttlefish, a squid-like sea mollusk, which it ingests. Ambergris is used in perfumery as a fixative to extend the life of a perfume and as a flavoring for food and beverages. Today ambergris is synthesized and used by the perfume trade, which has voluntarily refused to purchase natural ambergris to protect sperm whales from exploitation.
What is Ikebana?
Ikebana is the Japanese expression for the arrangement of living material in water. It is the ancient Japanese art of flower arrangement. Ikebana follows certain ancient rules that aim at achieving perfect harmony, beauty, and balance. Some describe Ikebana as sculpture with flowers. In Japan it has been practiced for 1,400 years. Buddhist monks in the 6th century practiced the art using pebbles, rock, and wood with plants and flowers. In Japan Ikebana was evolved and practiced exclusively by men priests first, then warriors and noblemen. Today, of course, Ikebana is practiced by millions of women as well as men. Although the great flower schools in Japan are mostly headed by men.
Why is the sky blue?
The sunlight interacting with Earth's atmosphere makes the sky blue. In outer space the astronauts see blackness because outer space has no atmosphere. Sunlight consists of light waves of varying wavelengths, each of which is seen as a different color. The minute particles of matter and molecules of air in the atmosphere intercept and scatter the white light of the sun. A larger portion of the blue color in white light is scattered. More so than any other color because the blue wavelengths are the shortest. When the size of atmospheric particles are smaller than the wavelengths of the colors, selective scattering occurs. The particles only scatter one color and the atmosphere will appear to be that color. Blue wavelengths especially are affected, bouncing off the air particles to become visible. This is why the sun looks yellow, yellow equals white minus blue. At sunset, the sky changes color because as the sun drops to the horizon, sunlight has more atmosphere to pass through and loses more of its blue wavelengths. The orange and red, having the longer wavelengths and making up more of sunlight at this distance, are most likely to be scattered by the air particles.
What is a weed?
A plant whose virtues have not yet been discovered. James Russell Lowell, 1819–1891, wrote in 1848, "A weed is no more than a flower in disguise." Ella Wheeler Wilcox, 1850–1919, a Wisconsin poet, more famous for her expression "laugh and the world laughs with you, weep, and you weep alone," wrote in her poem "The Weed" that a weed is but an unloved flower. Finally, Shakespeare, 1564–1616, wrote in Richard III, "Great weeds do grow apace."
How do the costs of various fuels compare?
Fuel prices are reported in the units in which they are typically sold, for example, dollars per gallon. However, since the energy content per gallon of each fuel is different, the price paid per unit of energy is often different from the price paid per gallon. The following chart shows the average price per gallon, the average price in gasoline gallon equivalents, and the average price in dollars per million BTU as of 2009. Interest in alternative fuels increases when the actual price differential per gallon increases even if the savings is not as great on an energy equivalent basis.
How large is the brain?
The brain weighs about 3 pounds, 1.4 kilograms. The average brain has a volume of 71 cubic inches, 1,200 cubic centimeters. In general, the brain of males averages about 10% larger than those of females due to overall differences in average body size. The brain contains approximately 100 billion neurons and 1 trillion neuroglia. There is no correlation between brain size and intelligence.
Do all animals have red blood?
The color of blood is related to the compounds that transport oxygen. Hemoglobin, containing iron, is red and is found in all vertebrates. Animals having a backbone, and a few invertebrates, animals lacking a backbone. Annelids, segmented worms, have either a green pigment, chlorocruorin, or a red pigment, hemerythrin. Some crustaceans, arthropods having divided bodies and generally having gills, have a blue pigment, hemocyanin, in their blood.
Why does excessive exercise cause muscles to become stiff and sore?
During vigorous exercise, the circulatory system cannot supply oxygen to muscle fibers quickly enough. In the absence of oxygen, the muscle cells begin to produce lactic acid, which accumulates in the muscle. It is this buildup of lactic acid that causes soreness and stiffness.
When do thunderstorms occur?
In the United States, thunderstorms usually occur in the summertime, especially from May through August. Thunderstorms tend to occur in late spring and summer, when large amounts of tropical maritime air move across the United States. Storms usually develop when the surface air is heated the most from the sun, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Thunderstorms are relatively rare in the New England area, North Dakota, Montana, and other northern states, latitude 60 degrees, where the air is often too cold. These storms are also rare along the Pacific Ocean because the summers there are too dry for these storms to occur. Florida, the Gulf states, and the southeastern states tend to have the most storms, averaging 70 to 90 annually. The mountainous Southwest averages 50 to 70 storms annually. In the world, thunderstorms are most plentiful in the areas between latitude 35 degrees north and 35 degrees south. In these areas there can be as many as 3,200 storms within a 12-hour nighttime period. As many as 1,800 storms can occur at once throughout the world.
What is the difference between a gene and a chromosome?
The human genome contains 24 distinct, physically separate units called chromosomes. Arranged linearly along the chromosomes are tens of thousands of genes. The term gene refers to a particular part of a DNA molecule defined by a specific sequence of nucleotides. It is the specific sequence of the nitrogen bases that encodes a gene. The human genome contains about 3 billion base pairs, and the length of genes varies widely.
When did the last passenger pigeon die?
At one time, 200 years ago, the passenger pigeon, Ectopus migratorius, was the world's most abundant bird. Although the species was found only in eastern North America, it had a population of 3 to 5 billion birds, 25% of the North American land bird population. Overhunting caused a chain of events that reduced their numbers below minimum threshold for viability. In the 1890s several states passed laws to protect the pigeon, but it was too late. The last known wild bird was shot in 1900. The last passenger pigeon, named Martha, died on September 1, 1914, in the Cincinnati Zoo. In a span of just 200 years the passenger pigeon passed from the world's most abundant bird species into extinction.
What does half-life mean?
Half-life is the time it takes for the number of radioactive nuclei originally present in a sample to decrease to 1/2 of their original number. Thus, if a sample has a half-life of 1 year, its radioactivity will be reduced to half its original amount at the end of a year and to 1/4 at the end of 2 years. The half-life of a particular radionuclide is always the same, independent of temperature, chemical combination, or any other condition. Natural radiation was discovered in 1896 by the French physicist Antoine-Henri Becquerel, 1852 to 1908. His discovery initiated the science of nuclear physics.
Why are the crystals in the cave of crystals so large?
The Cave of Crystals, Cavo de los Cristales, was discovered in the Nayaka mine in Chihuahua, Mexico in 2000. Crystals in the cave are made of gypsum and measure 36 feet, 11 meters long and can weigh up to 55 tons, as long as school buses and as heavy as a small herd of elephants. The cave is located nearly 1,000 feet, 300 meters, below the surface. The air temperature in the cave is 112 degrees Fahrenheit 50 degrees Celsius, and the humidity is 90 to 100%. The crystals grew because the water temperature was 136 degrees Fahrenheit 58 degrees Celsius. The temperature at which the mineral anhydrite dissolves into gypsum. The crystallized form of gypsum is selenite. Conditions in the cave were constant, allowing the crystals to continue to form and grow to their large size until 1985, when miners used pumps to lower the water table. Draining the cave. If the cave is allowed to fill with water again, the crystals will resume growing.
Which scientific disciplines study the human body?
The scientific disciplines of anatomy and physiology study the human body. Anatomy, from the Greek ana and temnein, meaning to cut up, is the study of the structure of the body parts, including their form and organization. Physiology, from the Latin, meaning the study of nature, is the study of the function of the various body parts and organs. Anatomy and physiology are usually studied together to achieve a complete understanding of the human body.
How sensitive is the hearing of birds?
In most species of birds, the most important sense after sight is hearing. Birds' ears are close to their bodies and are covered by feathers. The feathers, however, do not have barbules, which would obstruct sound. Nocturnal raptors, such as the great horned owl, have a very well-developed sense of hearing in order to be able to capture their prey in total darkness.
What group of vertebrates were the first terrestrial vertebrates?
Reptiles were the first group of vertebrates that were truly terrestrial. There were a number of adaptations that led to their successful terrestrial life.
Which countries have the greatest reserves of coal?
Coal is one of the most abundant fossil fuels. Over half of all the global reserves of coal are found in the United States. 29%, Russia, 19%, and China, 14%. The world's total recoverable reserves of coal were estimated at 826,001 million tons at the end of 2009. At the current rate of production, 2010, coal reserves are estimated to last for 119 years.
How much electricity does a typical American home use?
In 2008, the average monthly residential electricity consumption was 920 kilowatt-hours. More than half of the residential electricity consumption is for household appliances.
What are the characteristics of alpha, beta, and gamma radiation?
Radiation is a term that describes all the ways energy is emitted by the atom as X-rays, gamma rays, neutrons, or as charged particles. Most atoms, being stable, are non-radioactive. Others are unstable and give off either particles or gamma radiation. Substances bombarded by radioactive particles can become radioactive and yield alpha particles, beta particles, and gamma rays. Alpha particles, first identified by Antoine Henri Becquerel, 1852 to 1908. Have a positive electrical charge and consist of 2 protons and 2 neutrons. Because of their great mass, alpha particles can travel only a short distance, around 2 inches, 5 centimeters, in air, and can be stopped by a sheet of paper. Beta particles, identified by Ernest Rutherford, 1871 to 1937. Are extremely high-speed electrons that move at the speed of light. They can travel far in air and can pass through solid matter several millimeters thick. Gamma rays, identified by Marie, 1867 to 1934, and Pierre Curie, 1859 to 1906. Are similar to X-rays, but they usually have a shorter wavelength. These rays, which are bursts of photons, or very short-wave electromagnetic radiation, travel at the speed of light. They are much more penetrating than either the alpha or beta particles and can go through 7 inches, 18 centimeters, of lead.
What is electrophoresis?
Electrophoresis is a technique used to separate biological molecules, such as nucleic acids, carbohydrates, and amino acids, based on their movement due to the influence of a direct electric current in a buffered solution. Positively charged molecules move toward the negative electrode, while negatively charged molecules move toward the positive electrode.
What is an organ?
An organ is a group of several different tissues working together as a unit to perform a specific function or functions. Each organ performs functions that none of the component tissues can perform alone. This cooperative interaction of different tissues is a basic feature of animals, including humans. The heart is an example of an organ. It consists of cardiac muscle wrapped in connective tissue. The heart chambers are lined with epithelium. Nerve tissue controls the rhythmic contractions of the cardiac muscles.
What two functions are performed by the ear?
The ear has two functions, hearing and maintaining equilibrium or balance.
How many meteorites land on Earth in a given year?
Approximately 26,000 meteorites, each weighing over 3.5 ounces. 99.2 grams, land on Earth during a given year. 3,000 of these meteorites weigh more than 2.2 pounds, 1 kilogram. This figure is compiled from the number of fireballs visually observed by the Canadian Camera Network. Of that number, only 5 or 6 falls are witnessed or cause property damage. The majority fall in the oceans, which cover over 70% of Earth's surface.
When were relief maps first used?
The Chinese were the first to use relief maps, in which the contours of the terrain were represented in models. Relief maps in China go back at least to the 3rd century BCE. Some early maps were modeled in rice or carved in wood. It is likely that the idea of making relief maps was transmitted from the Chinese to the Arabs and then to Europe. The earliest known relief map in Europe was a map showing part of Austria, made in 1510 by Paul Daux.
When were hearing aids invented?
Specially designed hearing aids were described as early as 1588 by Giovanni Battista Porta. 1535 to 1615, in his book Natural Magic. These hearing aids were made out of wood in the shape of the ears of animals with a sharp sense of hearing. During the 1700s, speaking tubes and ear trumpets were developed. Bone conduction devices to transmit sound vibrations from outside to the bones of the ear. First suggested in 1550 by Gerolamo Cardano, 1501 to 1576, were further developed during the 1800s. The first battery-powered hearing aid in the United States was made by the Dictograph Company in 1898. Miller Reese Hutchison. 1876 to 1944, filed the patent for the first electric hearing aid in 1901. Refinements were made to the hearing aids throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. Miniaturization and microchips made it possible for hearing aids to become so small they now fit invisibly inside the ear.
Which planets are called inferior planets and which are superior planets?
An inferior planet is one whose orbit is nearer to the Sun than Earth's orbit is. Mercury and Venus are the inferior planets. Superior planets are those whose orbits around the Sun lie beyond that of Earth. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are the superior planets. The terms have nothing to do with the quality of an individual planet.
Who coined the term homeostasis?
Walter Bradford Cannon, 1871 to 1945, who elaborated on Claude Bernard's concept of the milieu intérieur. Interior environment, used the term homeostasis to describe the body's ability to maintain a relative constancy in its internal environment.
Which countries have uranium deposits?
Uranium, a radioactive metallic element, is the only natural material capable of sustaining nuclear fission. But only one isotope, uranium-235, which occurs in one molecule out of 40 of natural uranium, can undergo fission under neutron bombardment. Mined in various parts of the world, it must then be converted during purification to uranium dioxide, UO2. Uranium deposits occur throughout the world, with approximately 75% of all known uranium deposits in Australia. Other countries with significant deposits are Kazakhstan, 17% of the world's total. Canada, United States, South Africa, Namibia, Brazil, Niger, and Russia. Canada is the largest exporter of uranium.
Is the world actually getting warmer?
Global surface temperatures increased at a rate of near 0.11 degree F/decade. 0.06 degree C/decade, during most of the 20th century. But the rate increased to approximately 0.29 degree F/decade, 0.16 degree C/decade, during the past 30 years. There have been two sustained periods of warming, one beginning around 1910 and ending around 1945, and the most recent beginning about 1976. The decade 2000 to 2009 is the warmest on record with An average global surface temperature of 0.96 degrees Fahrenheit 0.54 degrees Celsius above the 20th century average.
What is the pollutant standard index?
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the South Coast Air Quality Management District of El Monte, California, devised the Pollutant Standard Index to monitor concentrations of pollutants in the air and inform the public concerning related health effects. The scale measures the amount of pollution in parts per million, and has been in use nationwide since 1978.
What are the three major groups of chordates?
The chordates are divided into three subphyla: Tunicata, Cephalochordata, and Vertebrata. Tunicates are like little leathery bags that are either free-living or attached to pilings, rocks, and seaweeds. They are also called sea squirts because a disturbed animal may contract and shoot streams of water from both of its siphons. The subphylum Cephalochordata contains the Amphioxus or lancelet, Branchiostoma, which looks like a small fish and has the three caudate features as an adult. Amphioxus also shows clear serial segmentation or metamerism. From the Greek terms meta, meaning between, among, after, and meros, meaning part. It is divided lengthwise into a series of muscle segments. Vertebrates, which comprise the third caudate subphylum, retain the same metamerism in internal structures.
From where do frankincense and myrrh originate?
Frankincense is an aromatic gum resin obtained by tapping the trunks of trees belonging to the genus Boswellia. The milky resin hardens when exposed to the air, forming irregularly shaped granules, the form in which frankincense is usually marketed and sold. Also called olibanum, frankincense is used as an ingredient in many different products, including pharmaceuticals, perfumes, fixatives, fumigants, and incense. Myrrh comes from a tree of the genus Commiphora, native to the northeastern region of Africa and the Middle East. Myrrh is also a resin obtained from trees. It is used in pharmaceuticals, perfumes, and toothpastes.
What is progeria?
Progeria is premature old age. There are two distinct forms of the condition, both of which are extremely rare. In Hutchinson-Gilford syndrome, aging starts around the age 4, and by 10 or 12, the affected child has all the external features of old age, including gray hair, baldness, and loss of fat, resulting in thin limbs and sagging skin on the trunk and face. There are also internal degenerative changes, such as atherosclerosis, fatty deposits lining the artery walls. Death usually occurs at puberty. Werner's syndrome, or adult progeria, starts in early adult life and follows the same rapid progression as the juvenile form with individuals. Developing disorders usually associated with aging as early as in their 20s and 30s. Most individuals with Werner's syndrome live until their late 40s or early 50s. The cause of progeria is unknown.
What is an algorithm?
An algorithm is a set of clearly defined rules and instructions for the solution of a problem. It is not necessarily applied only in computers, but can be a step-by-step procedure for solving any particular kind of problem. A nearly 4,000-year-old Babylonian banking calculation inscribed on a tablet is an algorithm, as is a computer program that consists of step-by-step procedures for solving a problem. The term is derived from the name of Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, c. 780-c. 850. A Baghdad mathematician who introduced Hindu numerals, including zero and decimal calculation to the West, when his treatise was translated into Latin in the 12th century. The art of computation with Arabic, Hindu, numerals became known as algorithm.
Which scientific disciplines provide evidence for evolution?
Although information from any area of natural science is relevant to the study of evolution, there are several in particular that directly support the work of Darwin and Wallace. Paleobiology, geology, and organic chemistry provide insight on how living organisms have evolved. Ecology, genetics, and molecular biology also demonstrate how living species are currently changing in response to their environments and therefore undergoing evolution.
Who was Charles Darwin?
The theory of natural selection proposed by Charles Darwin, 1809 to 1882, revolutionized all aspects of natural science. Darwin was born into a family of physicians and planned to follow his father and grandfather in that profession. Unable to stand the sight of blood, he studied divinity at Cambridge and received a degree from the university in 1830.
Which name is now used as a synonym for leprosy?
Hansen's disease is the name of this chronic, systemic infection characterized by progressive lesions caused by a bacterium, Mycobacterium leprae, which is transmitted through airborne respiratory droplets. The disease is not highly contagious. Continuous close contact is needed for transmittal. Antimicrobial agents, such as sulfones, dapsone in particular, are used to treat the disease.
How much space does a recycled ton of paper save in a landfill?
Each ton, 907 kilograms, saves more than 3 cubic yards of landfill space. In addition, recycling 1 ton, 907 kilograms, of cardboard saves 9 cubic yards of landfill space.
At what age does sperm production begin?
Sperm production begins with the onset of puberty, usually between ages 11 to 14 in boys. It continues throughout the life of an adult male. It is estimated that during his lifetime a normal male will produce as many as 300 million sperm per day.
What is an Alberta clipper?
An Alberta clipper is a little gyrating storm that develops on the Pacific front, usually over the Rocky Mountains of Alberta, Canada. This quick-moving storm moves southeast into the Great Plains, leaving a trail of cold air.
If diamond is the hardest substance, what is the next hardest substance?
Cubic boron nitride, which is the hardest ceramic, is the second hardest substance in the world.
Who invented calculus?
The German mathematician Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. 1646 to 1716, published the first paper on calculus in 1684. Most historians agree that Isaac Newton invented calculus 8 to 10 years earlier. But he was typically very late in publishing his works. The invention of calculus marked the beginning of higher mathematics. It provided scientists and mathematicians with a tool to solve problems that had been too complicated to attempt previously.
What was the Big Bang?
The Big Bang theory is the explanation most commonly accepted by astronomers for the origin of the universe. It proposes that the universe began as the result of an explosion, the Big Bang, 15 to 20 billion years ago. Two observations form the basis of this cosmology. First, as Edwin Hubble, 1889 to 1953, demonstrated, the universe is expanding uniformly, with objects at greater distances receding at greater velocities. Secondly, Earth is bathed in a glow of radiation that has the Characteristics expected from a remnant of a hot primeval fireball. This radiation was discovered by Arno A. Penzias, 1933. And Robert W. Wilson, 1936, of Bell Telephone Laboratories. In time, the matter created by the Big Bang came together in huge clumps to form the galaxies. Smaller clumps within the galaxies formed stars. Parts of at least one clump became a group of planets, our solar system.
Why are topographic maps important?
Topographic maps are distinguished by the contour lines that portray the shape and elevation of the land. They display the three-dimensional ups and downs of the terrain on a two-dimensional surface. Topographic maps usually portray natural features, such as mountains, valleys, plains, lakes, rivers, and vegetation, and man-made features, such as roads, boundaries, transmission towers, and even major buildings. Topographic maps are used by professionals for engineering, environment management, conservation of natural resources, energy exploration, public works design, and general commercial and residential planning. They are also used by individuals for outdoor recreational activities such as camping, hiking, biking, and fishing.
What is the origin of the term cell?
The term cell was first used by Robert Hooke, an English scientist who described cells. He observed in a slice of cork in 1665, using a microscope that magnified 30 times. Hooke identified little chambers or compartments in the cork that he called celluli, a Latin term meaning little rooms because they reminded him of the cells inhabited by monks. It is from this word that we got the modern term cell. He calculated that 1 square inch of cork would contain 1,259,712,000 of these tiny chambers or cells.
What are the floaters that move around on the eye?
Floaters are semi-transparent specks perceived to be floating in the field of vision. Some originate with red blood cells that have leaked out of the retina. The blood cells swell into spheres, some forming strings, and float around the areas of the retina. Others are shadows cast by the microscopic structures in the vitreous humor, a jelly-like substructure located behind the retina. A sudden appearance of a cloud of dark floaters, if accompanied by bright light flashes, could indicate retinal detachment.
When was the first curbside recycling program established in the United States?
The first municipal-wide curbside recycling program was started in 1974 in University City, Missouri, where city officials designed and distributed a container for collecting newspapers. As of 2008, there were 659 curbside recycling programs serving 59% of the total population in the United States.
What is the shape of a raindrop?
Although a raindrop has been illustrated as being pear-shaped or tear-shaped. High-speed photographs reveal that a large raindrop has a spherical shape with a hole not quite through it, giving it a donut-like appearance. Water surface tension pulls the drop into this shape. As a drop larger than 0.08 inch, 2 mm, in diameter falls, it will become distorted. Air pressure flattens its bottom and its sides bulge. If it becomes larger than 0.25 inch, 6.4 mm, across, it will keep spreading crosswise as it falls and will bulge more at its sides, while at the same time, its middle will thin into a bow tie shape. Eventually, in its path downward, it will divide into two smaller spherical drops.
When and by whom were clouds first classified?
The French naturalist Jean Lamarck, 1744–1829, proposed the first system for classifying clouds in 1802. His work, however, did not receive wide acclaim. A year later, the Englishman Luke Howard, 1772–1864, developed a cloud classification system that has been generally accepted and is still used today. Clouds are distinguished by their general appearance. Heap clouds and layer clouds, and by their height above the ground. Latin names and prefixes are used to describe these characteristics. The shape names are cirrus, curly or fibrous, stratus, layered, and cumulus, lumpy or piled. The prefixes denoting height are CO, high clouds with bases above 20,000 feet 6,096 meters. And alto, mid-level clouds from 6,500 to 20,000 feet 2,000 to 6,096 meters. There is no prefix for low clouds. Nimbo or nimbus is also added as a name or prefix to indicate that the cloud produces precipitation.
What is a Uniform Resource Locator, or URL?
A Uniform Resource Locator, URL, can be thought of as the address for a given computer on the Internet. A URL consists of two parts: 1, the protocol identifier, and 2, the resource name. The protocol identifier indicates which protocol to use, e.g., HTTP for Hypertext Transfer Protocol or FTP for File Transfer Protocol. Most browsers default to HTTP as the protocol identifier, so it is not necessary to include that part of the URL when entering an Internet address in the browser's toolbar. The resource identifier specifies the IP, Internet Protocol address or domain name where the web page is located. An IP address is a string of numbers separated by periods. More familiar and easier to remember than the IP address is a domain name. Domain names are composed of a name with a top-level domain, TLD, suffix. The IP address and domain name both point to the same place, typing 192.0.32.10 in the address bar of a web browser will bring up the same page as entering the more user-friendly example.com.
What were the first words spoken by an astronaut after touchdown of the lunar module on the Apollo 11 flight? And by an astronaut standing on the moon?
In July 20, 1969, at 4 hours 17 minutes and 43 seconds p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 20 hours 17 minutes and 43 seconds Greenwich Mean Time, Neil A. Armstrong, 1930. And Edwin E. Aldrin Jr., 1930, landed the lunar module Eagle on the Moon's Sea of Tranquility. And Armstrong radioed, "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." Several hours later, when Armstrong descended the lunar module ladder and made the small jump between the Eagle and the lunar surface, he announced, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." The article A was missing in the live voice transmission, and was later inserted in the record to amend the message to "one small step for a man."
Who discovered the formula for the area of a triangle?
Heron, or Hero, of Alexandria, 1st century B.C., is best known in the history of mathematics for the formula that bears his name. This formula calculates the area of a triangle with sides A, B, and C, with S equals half the perimeter. The Arab mathematicians who preserved and transmitted the mathematics of the Greeks reported that this formula was known earlier to Archimedes, c. 287 to 212 BCE. But the earliest proof now known is that appearing in Heron's Metrica.